Okay, so good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the PCWA NID Water Committee quarterly meeting. Today is Thursday, September 10th. We're here in the NID boardroom in Placer, or Nevada County, and we are zooming live through the screen. So we're all on the screen, and today it is 9:05 in the morning. So we'll start with a round of introductions, and I'll go ahead and start. I'm Greg Jones. I'm the interim general manager with NID.
Scott Miller, Director, NID Division 3.
Chip Close, NID Water Operations.
Doug Roderick, interim engineering manager.
Tony Ferengi, strategic affairs for PCWA.
Andy Fecco, general manager, PCWA.
Primo Santini, District 2 board member, PCWA.
Jeremy Shepard, Deputy Director of Technical Services, PCWA.
Laura Peters, Director, Division 4, Nevada Irrigation District.
So just a little housekeeping. We're wearing the masks because we're pretty tight. We've got these little pods, and they're pretty sensitive. So just kind of talking to those, and maybe we have to talk a little bit louder, I suppose, with our masks on. So hopefully, folks that are tuning in can hear us. Question: how many are tuned into this call right now? 5 folks. Okay. So what we'll do at the moment is we'll open the meeting up to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. And in order to do that, just press *9 to raise your hand, and we'll open you up to public comment on items not on the agenda. *9. Anybody? Okay, well, seeing none, we will close public comment. And let's move into item number C on the agenda. So, agenda review changes. PCWA, Andy, you guys got anything you want to change on this?
I don't think so. I think we're fine, thank you.
NID, any changes to it? Okay. All right, so we'll move on from changes. And let's open it up to item D, status of the service area agreement. Tony, you want to sort of give us a quick overview?
Yeah, I could do that, and then Chip, Doug, since we met, if I missed something. This is actually going to be a brief report. We met following our last committee meeting to talk about the service area agreement, where areas need to be sort of reviewed for appropriateness with modern day conditions in our service areas, infrastructure planning, and that kind of thing. We identified a few areas where your staffs are off sort of investigating some of those issues. I would kind of describe those as some peripheral issues that we're not really ready to bring to this committee yet. It's probably best for maybe like Chip and I to get to a point of agreement before it's ready for discussion here. There is one item that we need to sort of move forward on, though, and that is at the DeWitt Center. The county is moving fast. It's the next item, so I'm sort of teeing up a little bit of that, and I won't steal too much thunder from Jeremy who's going to cover that. But the county's wanting to move fast, and we do not want to get in the way of their planning. And the reality is, because PCWA and NID have been working for, frankly, years on that, I think we're ready to come to agreement on who's serving what areas and how, to where we could do an amendment to the current service area agreement soon, and then that would allow us to both of us to move forward in cooperation with the county. I had always thought that we would do that in a more holistic sense with renegotiation of other terms in the service area agreement, but I simply just don't want to delay the county by doing that. So I would suggest we do an amendment to the current agreement. And then
Hasn't this planned expansion and interconnection been our leverage as NID to try and get the service area agreement finished? I don't like to stop piecemealing it out. I feel like we've been trying to get these things done for a long time. Both tax sharing and service area agreements.
Sure. We have no involvement in your tax sharing issues or anything like that.
I think got resolved.
Yeah.
But, these are the issues that have carried.
Yeah.
So to piece it out is kind of.
So if I can add to that, Director Miller, that the service area agreement, as it was originally written, is meant to be a living document.
Okay.
One that is modified continuously as we continue to work out these areas of overlap and find out who's best to serve these areas. So I don't think it's ever meant to be a be-all, end-all document, and, as far as the negotiations of who serves what area, those have all been solidified through amendments. And I'm with Tony on this, in that the DeWitt Center, needs an update on amendment, I think it might be Amendment A. We can, update that and reflect the changes that the county and PCWA and NID have all been working together on who should serve what, and we can get those changes done and reflected in an updated document. That would be great.
Yeah,
Excellent. I
yeah.
appreciate the entertainment of the discussion, and if my staff is in support of it, then
Good.
that's my kind of question. Thank you.
And then that, and Jeremy can cover the big picture, there is a three-party agreement that has more to do with infrastructure, in the DeWitt Center that the county wants to do. It's a good idea to do that. It's more like an MOU. And what I would suggest is the county's lead on that three-party agreement. I think we should be, the two of us, we can pick one, but we should, try to advance this amendment ahead of that MOU that the county's leading, so we can get that done. And,
I hear you. I think my biggest struggle with that is that the property boundaries are changing as the county is redeveloping DeWitt area. So it's a little hard to capture who serves what as the property lines change.
Well,
And so that's one of the things we ran into on the First Avenue project, is that we did annex, but the parcel boundaries themselves were morphed. So
okay.
a little bit hard to capture all that until we really know what the final outlay looks like. But
Thank you. And again, this was kind of, I felt there was some unsettled in all this, and it didn't mean it as a negative or positive, but thank you. This is further clarification.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But either way, I think we know which areas, the future holds for each agency, and I think you're right. We need to work as a three-party agreement with the county and figure out, maybe they have a little bit better plans for the future. I know the First Avenue Mercy Housing was really, really fast-tracked, and so I don't think we had a lot of time to solidify all that.
I think the amendment, I think it can be simply said as, NID would serve the area within their current exclusion south of, Burst and Willow Creek. So I don't think we necessarily need, property lines, right, Chip? I mean, in other words, you can just say that's the area that's being annexed.
Was actually Director Peters' vision. Do you have an opinion or knowledge of anything?
Maybe why don't we punt that to, the next item, and then if we feel we need to revisit it, come back.
Yeah.
But- Okay. Well, good. So that closes that item out.
Okay.
I have a question about it. Do we have to have a copy of that service area agreement? Is that a?
We can get that. We haven't seen that. Okay, we'll get that too. Yeah. We can do that. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Status of the update of the agreement. Any? Star nine? Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll close the, open up item E.
Star nine.
All right.
Jeremy, do you wanna?
Yeah, I've provided a handout, that is passed around. It basically shows the build-out scenario, for the Placer County Government Center. In July, the county completed their water system planning, analysis, on how to serve the government center, in the future and throughout build-out. They evaluated 3 different scenarios. One was a combined scenario where both NID and PCWA infrastructure was utilized to serve the area. And there was a NID alternative where only NID served the center, and then PCWA only alternative. They landed on the combined scenario, which is really consistent with the way it exists today, and that is the government center is fed through a master meter where PCWA supplies, the domestic water supply, to the center. And it also includes 2 emergency interties for fire protection, which are served by NID. And so at the end of the day, after their evaluation, their conclusion was the most cost-effective way to move forward for them was once again the combined scenario, similar to what I had just explained here. Back to kind of the service level agreement, and then in fact, kind of illustrating, I guess, in terms of what it would look like. The Mercy Center, as we were just talking about, is currently under development up here in the Mercy Housing. Yeah. And ultimately, I think what, Tony, you were alluding to was that the last time that, through the last LAFCO annexation, it was just for the Mercy Center or Mercy Housing Development. And so now we would look into kind of broadening out that annexation. Generally, there's a hatched area, but if you take the intersection of East Pipes and kind of go about diagonally down here and up around in here, this would be the annexed area, according to our understanding and current discussions.
Annexed to NID or annexed to?
Annexed to NID, excluding, I believe, the Home Depot area, which
Well, yeah,
PCWA
that's why I say,
serves.
yeah, we already serve, things north of First and Willow Creek.
Yeah,
And so
in this area.
the annexation would go from about where the Mercy Housing annexation was. If you draw a polygon line kind of due south from there down to about where it says Courtyard Admin, and then you'd head due east, and then you'd head at the end of the hatch area, head due north to Willow Creek. And so basically, it's your exclusion area south of First Street, south of Willow Creek, is our understanding of what you would be annexing. Is that accurate, Chip?
Yeah, I think that's in line with what we just discussed.
That's the fire station and the emergency intertie.
Yeah.
Where you're getting to there.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was,
On with all this and the, noting the NID excluded, was that Home Depot? The page, are we not looking for reimbursement?
Let me real quick, on the NID excluded, are you referring to the note on the?
The red.
Yeah, so that's actually irrelevant to the annexation.
Yeah.
It is,
But you guys are
no,
cost sharing on the top one in red, cost
No,
sharing segment.
no, that's what I wanted,
Half cost.
that's what I'd like to clarify.
Oh, I'm just reading the thing, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
This is an excerpt of the actual full report.
okay.
And what they're referring to in the red
Yeah.
is the cost sharing agreement between the developer and the county.
So Home
build the
Depot or
infrastructure.
whomever,
Correct.
peace and love.
Yeah, actually,
That's-
nothing really involved with either agency.
Okay, yeah, no, but that's the exclusion, it's not amongst us, it's.
Yeah.
So what we have is NID has a large exclusionary square, essentially. Right now, it's an island within NID service territory, which is this
up the Bell Road.
upper right corner
Yeah.
of this map,
All the way to Bell?
all the way to Bell. PCWA has been serving the area that is white up here where the N has, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 businesses.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, Professional Drive, et cetera. PCWA has been serving that territory in that area for 35 years.
Yeah.
Treated well. And Home Depot, right? So the exclusionary section that we're talking about is this big square. NID recently annexed in this short little finger, which is now the Mercy Housing Center. That's what we just did. And so what we're referring to is the hatched section that has a bunch of res and flex and hotel and res section below First Street and below Willow Creek Drive. Correct?
Yep, that's it.
That helps.
And so that was where I was thinking, we could just write the amendment to just say it that way. Without proper meets and bounds or any of that, just basically do that. But staff will work on the technicalities of that, but I think I keep hearing common understanding that PCWA is currently serving, the intent for new commercial is for NID to serve new commercial PCWA to continue to serve sort of the county center, and then PCWA to continue to serve its current commercial.
Yeah, and what I wanted these two to understand is that this would still include this sort of half square section of the current island. What we're talking about is potentially not annexing into NID's service territory this, and the rationale is that the Home Depot sticks with the service by PCWA, although I believe NID services the fire flow.
Didn't we have big tanks?
No, the Home Depot has its
They did their own fire
They did their
flow.
own.
That's right, that's
With
right.
some big tanks.
That's right.
We had
Okay.
tax sharing.
It's a bit of a process.
So there was a question from my board
Always
last time
been
when we did the annexation on on the Mercy, was, is NID looking to annex the full square?
Right.
Recognizing that PCWA still is serving the north corner that you've been serving for 30 plus years. That was a question that, I had we've been starting to have with Placer LAFCO, because there was some concern about the overlap of services. The whole purpose of the LAFCO process is that you don't have an overlap and a inconsistency of service boundaries, right? And so it was mentioned at our board meeting when we did the annexation that we want to continue the annexation of the Placer County Government Center, and I'm still a little confused on that upper portion. Not that NID's interested in taking the service territory, and PCWA has been serving them for 30 plus years, and the Home Depot. But what does it look like when we expand our maps and we look at our total service area incomplete, and we're looking to clean up our islands that are within the service territory, quite frankly, and we may not solve that today. I think that was just, I do hear that we're keeping the boundary where PCWA serves what you're serving.
Okay.
The Willow to First, South Willow to South First is certainly what NID will be moving towards annexing, because the county wants to build their commercial businesses there, and they want to get that going, and so we're going to get moving forward with that. It's this upper corner that I still have not totally positive on if it is annexed, and then it's just annexed, and there's no service needed, right? Which we have in certain places. Yeah. That's just the thought.
So I have a clarification. I think I heard that NID would service new businesses in the area, but that's not in the
Commercial.
white area.
No, not in the white, the white.
Only in this area.
Yeah,
Correct.
That was sort of the spirit, before we talked about lines on a map, the spirit of how we wanted to move forward all together was, that PCWA would continue to serve whatever it's serving now. Okay, that's just good. Why reinvest, right? PCWA would be the water provider for the DeWitt campus, but new commercial development, NID would do that. And it's sort of logical because it's somewhat contiguous. The commercial area that we just talked about as a hatched area is really what we're talking about.
But just a clarification point, Director Peters, we do serve the CDRC building in the upper corner there.
Oh, okay. Oh, we do.
Yeah.
But Chip's been intimately involved with this, and I will take his direction every day on this, and I do appreciate the clarifications. It's been that's why I had to hear the question on some of this, but our staff has been doing an excellent job and get involved, and I will take the rest of the staff. Assured.
Okay, all right.
Quick question.
So it sounds like you guys are on the same page.
I think so.
Yeah. No reason to muddle it further.
Quick question, what's the existing infrastructure for both PCWA and NID to serve these areas?
16 is always pipes on the map
Does each entity have the ability to provide treated water and untreated water for the needs of these areas? Or it seems like this, over the years, probably over the decades, evolved the way it has because of the infrastructure not being in place for one entity or the other to serve it all. Is that an accurate description or not?
Yeah, I believe it's
Well, we had to
pretty-
increase our Highway 49 project in anticipation of this, in some ways, but just to bring it in, I forget the size, 18, 16? Yeah, so, yeah, and probably originally it was, canals.
So NID has multiple lines coming into the area, which
Okay.
allow to serve both, their retail customers and provide adequate fire flow,
Okay.
from a treated water system, distribution system.
And the intertie, that was important for us to be able to be helpful to PCWA when the intertie was.
Yeah, as part of that distribution
Good neighbor.
system, they have
Okay.
2 emergency interties for fire flow for the government center
Okay.
area. They also have a canal nearby, where they could provide untreated water for, landscaping and other needs that the county may have.
And they're planning on utilizing that as they move forward with their build-out.
Yeah.
Is that a box?
Yeah, they already have a box.
Okay.
And my understanding is, once upon a time, the county owned their own water treatment plant that happened to be located right at Home Depot.
Okay.
We ended up, PCWA ended up taking the treatment plant over, ultimately replacing that treatment plant with a connection to their distribution system. We could provide the retail, however, we could not provide the fire flow.
Okay.
And so there was a limitation there, and thus the emergency interconnections, for fire flow for the county.
Okay, thank you.
So what Doug was alluding to, so from here, the county will likely take the lead. The plan is that they'll enter into a 3-party agreement, at a high level, just kind of explaining how the system will work with both NID infrastructure and PCWA infrastructure, and some general terms and conditions related to that. Fire flow from NID, untreated water for potential landscaping needs from NID, domestic supply from PCWA. And then that agreement will then likely create separate 2-party agreements to work out the finer details for each of the agencies, such as the interties need to be upgraded and automated. That would end up, in a 2-party agreement between them. And then the future expansion of their distribution system would be built per PCWA standards, and ultimately we would absorb that into our distribution system rather than it be an independent system owned by the county. And so those terms and conditions would then be worked out between 2 separate 2-party agreements.
Fair to say that MOU, that 3-party MOU is really focused on infrastructure plans, right?
Yep. And that concludes. Any questions from?
County's taken over the drafting of that MOU, right?
Like,
If I recall.
they sent out a term sheet last week.
Right.
Director Alpine has joined us on the telephone. He wasn't able to make it. So.
Morning, Josh.
Okay, Chip, Doug, do you have anything more to add to that item?
I do not.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comment then. Those of you listening, star 9. I'm assuming everybody can listen. Any star 9 takers, hands up? Okay, seeing none, we will close item number E. Item F, the update on the Combie-Ophir project. Who's speaking?
Well, I guess is this just a brief update on where we're at construction-wise, I guess, so the contractor's back on the site. They're starting to build the bypass pipe so we can get ready for our October 15th, 16th outage, where we'll switch over to the bypass and then start the actual construction of the second phase of the project. Project will be expected to be done probably by May. Water will be flowing obviously by April 1st, but overall final punch list items and everything else will probably be done by the end of May. And then that project will be wrapped up and be finished. That's it. Nothing too exciting about that right now. They're just prepping to get ready to ramp up for this winter. So unless there's some specific questions on that part of it.
I asked to have this item on here because we're just always wanting to sort of keep pace with where you're headed, and, you know, and I know you're not prepared right now to talk about whether there's opportunity for PCWA in that, but, you know, we're interested and we're working on it, so, if you get to a point, where you're sort of ready to say whether you have capacity to sell, you can talk. On the sort of in the same spirit, and because it's got the word Ophir in it, I'm gonna go ahead and roll Ophir Water Treatment Plan into this item. Because these are kind of two projects that we're each respectively working on where there's sort of opportunity to share. You know, so we've thrown out the invitation with Ophir Water Treatment Plant for NID to engage in that sort of long-term planning and financing process. Not that we're out looking for money to invest right now because we're trying to delay the project a bit. But I kind of just want to let you know there's a lot going on the planning for that. And some of it's related to development activity, although that is uncertain as we all know. But I have been shocked at some of the projects that are happening, like Bickford Ranch, which hasn't broken ground, but I am getting the signals that they are actually going to break ground next year. The Placer Vineyards project has broken ground way out there. And then Lincoln, the Village 1 area, is certainly, you know, they're moving iron all over the place out there. That's in your service area. So development's happening. You know, it's anybody's guess as to whether it keeps going. And then the city of Roseville is the most actively engaged right now. We've actually entered into a planning agreement with them. It's sort of a predecessor to entering into a financing agreement with Ophir, where we're planning for transmission infrastructure, I think is probably the best way to characterize it, where Ophir water could be delivered to the city of Roseville. And so we're sort of moving ahead, and it would be best for PCWA if all candidates, all potential investors in that program were sort of, you know, at the table on parallel conversations, or maybe at some point even in a room together to talk about how we're going to work together on that. So I just want to throw that out that, you know, there's always going to be stops to get on the train, but the train is moving. I think is probably the best way to summarize that. And Jeremy's working on some, he's sort of evaluating our capital plan and where cash flow stands and where it might come from. I don't know if you want to say
Every few years, we reevaluate our water connection charge. And in 2017 is when we last completed an analysis. And that analysis at that time included a partnering option and considerations to partner with PCWA and the Ophir Water Treatment Plant. That included the city of Roseville and the city of Lincoln, I believe, under that analysis. And so as 2020 is kind of ending, we're starting to ramp up again on that and freshening that up. And so we're just, once again, engaging any potential partners.
Is it $16,000 per connection or something? What?
I believe it was.
I'd rather
say it's price ahead of us.
Yeah, I'd rather say it price per gallon, and it was like $10 a gallon, or, you know,
Well, at one point, when it was about $16,000 a connection, I thought.
Are you asking what our connection fee
Yeah,
is to our customers for any?
Talking about
Or are you asking about the Ophir Water Treatment Plant buy-in?
Oh, I see, that's a sub.
There's a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference.
If you're asking about what our connection fee is per EDU, it's a little over $19,000.
19, yeah, because we were
yeah.
always.
If you're asking about the Ophir Water Treatment Plant,
Right.
it's about $10 a gallon.
Distinction.
For the capacity.
Thank you,
Yeah.
excellent, yes, I was, exactly those questions.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
curious.
it's, you know, it's not something you'd respond to now, but we just want, you know, everyone to know that, you know, planning is happening, and we'd love to have you at the table.
What's the size of that treatment plant?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, it's a phased plant, 10 MGD phases, 30 MGD total, with the future scenario where you could potentially add an additional 30 MGD after that. But the program currently involves a 30 MGD plant built over 3 days.
Got it.
So, what's in the ground right now, Jeremy, and what are we doing at the moment on the site?
So,
We're not leaving the site alone.
I think we've already mentioned, we got to 90% design, shelved the design. However, in order to perfect, so to speak, our permits, specifically our federal and state permits, we're currently under construction of the extension of all the pipe and underground utilities from the existing area where we stubbed out through the wetland area onto the other side. And what that allows for is, once that's completed, we have in essence kind of perfected those permits, and we take those off the list so that when we need to ramp up again, we're not having to chase permits that would end up taking a long time to acquire and go. So we should be,
And the
shelf
generator.
ready.
And our backup power supply.
And thank you, I almost forgot about that. Yes,
They weren't turned off.
we're hitting the streets, I believe, this week with the procurement documents for a 2.5 megawatt generator, which hopefully, will assist in future PSPS events out there. That's a key facility for us in the outage when PG&E water supply ceases for a bit. So that is underway, and the goal is to have that generator up and running for the fall outage of 2021.
Has NID participated in any of the previous so-far planning for this facility?
At a real high level, NID did some infrastructure planning where they looked at options for building, I shouldn't steal your thunder, Chip, do you want to further?
Go right ahead.
Sorry.
You're doing great.
You've got some master planning design, actually some pretty extensive master plans that looked at options, and one of those options was investing in overwork.
There's a regionalization, so we cannot do the Valley View.
It was part of the options analysis for the Valley View treatment plant for the city of Lincoln.
So we've been moving towards that at a high level for some time,
Okay.
to get away from having to do our own buy-in on there. There's a regionalization favored by the state and everybody else.
It's hard to build stuff like this by yourself anymore.
Oh, and the pipeline, we were gonna have to get it down there was.
Yeah, it is hard.
Yeah.
So, we welcome
Existing
partnerships.
conveyance, yes. That was around. I haven't seen it that way.
Out of curiosity, the supply is both, right? PG&E water and American River water should need be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and NID if you want to do
It
it.
goes by the color of the molecule.
Yeah, right. Yeah, isotope testing.
They're not all blue.
And hence the other reason for the generator is to help out during.
Yeah, so it's a two pump lifts from the American River, so we have a particular problem in October of every year when PG&E takes their canal outage. During that canal outage, which is 30 to 45 days every fall, the PG&E supply from the South Canal that runs right next to the site dries up while they do canal maintenance, and we then pump water from the American River. It's a double pump lift. It's the pumps at the river lift at the first 200 feet into the tunnel that runs underneath Highway 80 to the Ophir site, and then at the Ophir Road Pump Station, there's another 200-foot pump lift to the surface at Ophir, which that pump lift is the one that we're providing backup generation for right now. The pumps at the river are on a dedicated circuit that we own out of the Flint substation, and so far this year we've been okay on PG&E tries to keep the Flint circuit hot under all circumstances because it serves their courtyard and the core area of Auburn. The question is, will they keep our circuit down to the river hot during PSPS events? So we're analyzing that right now, and we're also looking at options for powering the American River pumps either from the 2.5 megawatt generator that's at Ophir using a cable from there through the tunnel infrastructure down to the river, or putting a second generating unit at Flint substation or at the river it's really not a good idea to have 9,000 gallons of diesel down by the river, and so I'm trying to avoid that. But if we put it up at Flint, we could probably power Flint that way too. But it's just tremendously expensive, and generators right now, what are we gonna spend on this thing by the time it's all said and done?
Overall, about $3 million.
For
the one.
kilowatts. For the one.
For the one.
So double that, or maybe a little more if we put one over there. And so we're trying to avoid buying a second generator, but if PG&E can't guarantee us that they'll keep Flint hot under all circumstances, then we may have to go that way. And 2.5 megawatts at each location allows us to bring enough water up.
Yeah, ultimately, that coincides with our fall outage demand.
Right.
And it should also be mentioned that really what we ended up doing was accelerating a generator we were gonna build under the first phase of Ophir as a backup to the plant.
Mhm.
Well, PSPS said, hey, why don't you move that forward a little bit and accelerate that portion, and then at which time we'll then build another generator, once the plant's up and going. But, but it basically meets our fall outage needs. It would be enough for the.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's always been a concern for NID being involved in that, is that during the PG&E outage, it's very difficult for NID to get any of our water down to your facility, because we use PG&E to get it there.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's.
Yeah, there's a workaround. Yeah.
And by the way, to just bring it back to the named item, which is the Ophir Combie project, because it's a little complex, it's worth saying it in the simplest possible terms. So, PG&E's got an outage in the fall, which would also affect your ability to deliver your water to Ophir Water Treatment Plant for that month. The workaround we have for that is, with this Ophir Combie project, is you deliver us a set amount of water into sort of our Auburn water system.
Rock Creek.
And in exchange, we'll deliver you American River water, and so everybody's happy. And I promise you, it's the same molecules going to Lincoln. So don't worry about it. It's the right.
Those the color of them.
Yeah, so, that's the idea, and that's why it's convenient that the word Ophir is on both of these programs, because, they do sort of meet, and that's just, again, called partnering on the end.
Yeah.
Right. And where would we
Driven
pick
largely
that
by
your
your
water
canal
at?
falling off the wall.
Sorry?
The water that you would be delivering NID, where would we be picking that up at?
At Lincoln.
Lincoln.
And Lincoln,
Serve Lincoln with that.
Oh, okay.
So you send us, enough water in our, raw water system of Auburn, which has the demand there. And we would, exchange that raw water for a delivery to Ophir Water Treatment Plant that you would deliver to Lincoln, or that we would sort of deliver to Lincoln on your behalf.
And we were driven by when whatever canal fell off the wall on these guys, we were really motivated to be good neighbors and upgrade what we could do, and that led to the whole Rock Creek in time.
Yeah.
If nothing else, for the outage every year.
Yeah.
Laura, in summary, the partnership would look something as NID brings their own water to the table. We treat it as Ophir Water Treatment Plant and wheel it, so to speak, through our system to the NID service area in Lincoln. However, when the outage occurs, NID can't provide the water to the Ophir Trans, so we pump from the river and supply that in exchange for the Auburn exchange. Just see, I wish I had a map, but
Yeah, it's a system approach.
yeah.
Thank you for your update.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Anybody on the phone with a comment, public comment on this item? Star nine?
Star nine. Just go.
All right, we will close.
You got,
Wait, there is one.
You got one.
Some.
Come on, then.
Who could it be? Is there a name or a number?
Yes. This is Josh Alpine. I just wanted to see if...
Josh Alpine.
Look at Josh.
I just wanted to say hello. Sorry, please excuse my tardiness to the event today, to the meeting.
Well, you made it now. Thank you for being here.
Okay,
South County appreciates you guys keeping the power on during the outage the other day.
hey, good. It's unique, huh? A lot different from the last PSPS.
Yes, it is. Okay, Thank you, Josh. Was Josh the only one? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is a status report on NID's rate study. So I can start with that. As you know, NID did a cost of service analysis, a cost of service study back in the late part of last year. We delivered that service study to the board in, I think it was February of this year, and it was identified that had it had kind of an issue. We touched on identifying costs specifically per zone, which was a number of zones in water treatment zones and then canal zones. So we identified the actual O&M costs associated with it from our maintenance and our operations. What was difficult to put on top of that was our administrative costs for the district, which was roughly 50 to 53% of the total cost to deliver water to the whole to our communities. And so we've created the water rates committee to look at this and identify what would be an appropriate rate structure for the district moving forward. And after a number of meetings throughout, COVID happened, we took a couple months there of hiatus. We started back up in June, July, and we started discussing the option of what would it be to extend our third of our 3-year approval process for our current 218 rate package that was approved in 2019, so we'd be 2019, 2020, utilizing that third of the 3-year approval that the board set from 2021. And it was determined through the rates committee and through some analyses that we could do that. We could utilize the same rate package that the board approved through the 218 process in 2019 and utilize the water rates committee from now through the second or third quarter of next year as we analyze a number of different activities within the district, which is how do we best allocate those administrative costs throughout the district, whether on a postage stamp process, by meter, that sort of thing. So the rates committee is going to look into that. We're going to look into other activities such as the ag, an additional ag subsidy of some sort, in addition to the already subsidies that the district provides its water rate customers right now. In 2020, we brought over $13.5 million from our hydroelectric division to subsidize our water rates package. We realize that in the years moving forward, as we project out into our FERC license process, that certainly is an unsustainable activity. So in 2021, the district looked at utilizing our tax revenues to help offset and pay for debt. So we're utilizing roughly $7.5 million in tax revenue, as opposed to going towards capital projects, which we've delayed, to supporting debt, the debt service coverage, as well as we have identified roughly $3 million worth of O&M activities that we have delayed in our 2021 budget as well. So we've come up with that delta necessary to balance the budget for 2021, so to speak, for utilizing this third of the 3-year rate study package and moving into 2021 as the Water Rates Committee identifies additional perhaps revenue streams that the district might be looking at, perhaps budgetary things that it can continue to reduce budget needs on certain things. We're going to be exploring that. We're also going to be looking, like I said, at the administrative cost, the actual cost to deliver water from our operations and maintenance sides of the world, and then get into a rate package, which we will have to do by. It would be great to have that rate package complete and finalized before we enter, or at least by the time we enter into our budget process for 2022, so we have a sure number of revenue that we're looking at. So that would be sometime in August of next year as we anticipate a 218 package process. But right now, the board has approved moving forward with the third of the 3-year rate package, and we're utilizing the Water Rates Committee to meet on a monthly basis, to get to the point where by the second quarter of next year, we're really moving into a rate package 218 process for the following years, and hopefully that turns out to be a 5-year package process, and we don't have to come back and do it too often. So that's sort of an update.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything that I missed out of? You're on the Rates Committee, Laura. Do you have any opinion or thoughts? Okay.
If I may, can I ask a question of PCWA? At one point in time, you guys had different categories, I believe, of raw water customer classifications. You had like commercial ag versus regular ag. Is that something that still exists, or are you guys postage stamp now?
Postage stamp.
The zone thing went away as well.
Correct.
Very good. All right.
So I should expand on that a little bit. That we had different zones for a number of reasons, but in particularly in West Placer County, there was a commercial ag rate that was lower because the reliability was lower. It was based on reliability.
Gotcha.
When we changed to a Zone 6 structure, which is all our zones are the same, pay the same rates on raw and treated water, from Alta all the way down through the county line in West Placer are all on the same rate now. Everyone's reliability also became equal.
Okay.
And so our rice growers in West Placer now pay the same rate as large ag everywhere else, but their reliability is the same as it was, as every other customer in our canal system. And so, yeah, we're true postage stamp now on that. And we're, the cost of service study is, they're all paying at least the cost of service on their per acre foot cost, essentially, for out there, or per miner's inch, depending on where they are. So, yeah, it's greatly simplified our lives, I think I would say, to have that.
Well, we appreciate the input, because as we move forward, that's one of the things we were discussing, is do we have different rates for commercial versus non, and
Right.
so it's good to get your guys' input on your experience.
And what was the driving force? Was there a lawsuit? Was it the state? How did it, because it was always, we're going, well, they're doing it, meaning PCWA, and we were always being asked, and then our attorneys were like, it's gonna come up at some point. So what did trigger?
I think it was the other way around.
Yeah.
The zones were
What do you mean?
formed, in other words, operationally, it was absolutely logical the whole thing should be one. I remember when we formed Zone 6, because I was at the podium giving a presentation, I remember Director Santini said something like, good decisions sort of make themselves.
Right.
It's just good public policy, the way it's run. Our canal system all runs in sort of unison. What happened was, how did we get where we had the multiple zones, is we sort of grew organically. We were formed with our Middle Fork project, but shortly thereafter, the community asked us to take over for PG&E in a certain area, and then that happened sort of again in a small spot out in Roseville, and then later Zone 3, because it was another sort of separate spot for that the community wanted us to take over for PG&E. But it's all connected with this backbone canal system. We sort of formed these zones with it was really because when we took over the PG&E systems, there was a purchase price. And you had to put that purchase price onto the direct beneficiaries, and that was very sort of more limited and made sense for a zone.
This is even before 218.
That was more.
Coinciding similarly, but okay, interesting.
But once all the debt was retired, everything was paid for in those systems, the reasons for the zones there was no reason for them.
Okay.
And so at that time, it was just obvious the whole system runs as a whole. And my personal opinion, just by observing those that have watched, certain customers that have paid attention to the process, it made sense for them. There was no challenge. They looked at it and said, oh, yeah, that makes absolute sense. And, some people paid more and some people, paid a little less, but I think what happened was everyone realized that we want to have this high standard of reliability across the whole system. And when the customers understood that, they said, oh, we get it. So that's it. And so you had asked, has it been good or bad? I would say it's been good.
Right.
Well, that's actually what the driving force was, actually. We've looked at it, as we expanded treated water lines, do you do it but then you do it as a zone and or charge them, because some people need lifts with the topography and whatnot. It gets by into pressure reducing stations, conversely. And we just decided that it was no one little area could actually afford it. It was cost prohibitive. It always has been. That's why we had our limited infrastructure. As we expanded the infrastructure, we then blended it out with the justification that the whole system needs to run, and we absorbed the discrepancies based on topography into our one size thing. So, yeah, no, but we were always like, they're doing it. And it was always part of the discussion. So it's interesting how you got there. Yeah, not by intent, but just that's how it grew. And then the 218 thing.
Yeah.
So with the single thing, you're feeling more comfortable with the 218 at this point. Okay. Just wasn't sure if there was an outside force that queried.
No, I mean, Tony gave a great summary, but the decision for us to go to a Zone 6 was just a recognition of the reality of the circumstances. I think I just would like to emphasize what Tony said before. The fact that we had zones was the piecemeal part of it.
The purchase.
Okay? And then once you got past that, it's anybody looking at the system would say it's one system. And let's just recognize it and move on. So that's what we did.
How did you ensure increased reliability? You were saying it before, it was based on reliability. How did you ensure that
The rice farmers in the
those rice
west.
farmers?
Yeah, so in particular,
Zone 5.
well, yeah, they were called Zone 5, and that was our rice farmers out there. And so the rate that they were paying for water in Zone 5 was very low and reflective of a cost of water from PG&E prior to the contract renegotiation with PG&E.
Tail race kind of thing.
I'm sorry?
Tail race waters after generation.
Well, I mean, we have a contract with PG&E for 125,000 acre-feet of water from their Drum Spalding system.
Okay.
And so the old blended rate was around $2 an acre-foot for water delivered from PG&E.
Our tail race.
And after the contract was renegotiated in 2013, that went from $2 to roughly $40, okay, accelerated by inflation every year, so it's currently at about $45, give or take.
Yeah.
So we couldn't continue to charge Zone 5 $2 while buying it from PG&E for $45. They wanted increased reliability because at that point, when there was a PG&E shortage during the drought, 2013, 2014, 2015, we
Cut them off.
cut them off. We said there is no PG&E water available for your uses.
Right.
And so after the drought, as part of the Zone 6 transition, what we gave them in exchange for them paying the cost of water, true cost of water as it was then, was that we gave them access to the Middle Fork Project supply pumped from the American River down the Auburn Ravine and to their location, so that they were not wholly reliant on just if there was a PG&E supply available to them. Essentially,
There wasn't intertie available to put that in.
right. But it's a cost, right? To get that to single lift water from the American River is a first 200-foot pump lift underneath Highway 80 and drops in at Lozanos Road in Ophir, and that single lift is roughly equivalent to the cost to buy water from PG&E. It's about $45 to pump it. And so it worked out okay, and so happened to work out okay at times. And so their reliability, they're essentially get access to the same multiple sources of water as our other canal customers do, and in exchange, instead of paying $2.80 an acre foot, they're now paying $45 an acre foot. So, yeah, it worked out.
And how about as far as other reliability regarding your treated water versus raw water customers? Do you split the overall cost of delivery 50/50, or does one of them bear?
No, it's we operate to a sort of and our operating paradigm is that the treated water customers are gonna have as close to 100% reliability as possible. And if you just roughly think of our system, about a third of our water is delivered to treated water customers and about 2/3 to raw water customers, volumetrically. It's about 1 to 2, I would say. But the treated water customers, if there ever is a shortage or a canal outage, the raw water customers are the first to be cut, both volume in a drought, or if there is a problem on the system, like the Bear River Canal outage, we're gonna cut them first. And so that sort of, the top tier of reliability is reserved for our water treatment plants, and that's why, you know, their cost of water, they cover much more of the canal infrastructure maintenance costs, because we're getting, that canal is essentially, the first part of that canal is reserved for their use and their reliability, whereas the raw water customers are sort of floating on top of that initial allocation of water. And so that's why the treated water customers essentially are buying water for more, because they're buying a higher level of service and a higher level of reliability. And I probably could, if I had a calculator, get the amount, but, you know, if you think of our raw water customers paying, you know, $1, our treated water customers probably pay $4.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably about a 4-to-1 ratio for them to buy the reliability, you know, that they're buying. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes great sense, and I super.
Yeah, get the numbers about right?
Yeah, I think in the ballpark.
Okay, thank you, that's all about a general manager.
Can I follow up with some?
Yeah. I'm happy to be in the ballpark.
Yeah. I think what's important, though, is for people to realize the treated water rates don't begin at the treatment plant.
Right.
Right, I mean, the treated water customers need the canal,
That's right.
Yeah.
and in fact, they need it more than the raw water customers at some level.
Thank you, that helps as we move into that cost of service study into next year,
Yeah,
so.
it sure does.
Yeah, and our cost of service study is online, I recall.
Okay.
It is, but if it's not, we'll send you our last version, which laid out this theory that we operate under, pretty well. And it took a while to get there, right?
Yeah.
For us to really put some numbers to that, what's reliability worth? Really, that's really the question you're
That's
asking.
what we're
a lot of
struggling with at this point, because we're right now, we're 50/50, you know, so, well, wait a minute, there's a reliability component that I don't think we're considering yet, so.
Yeah.
And I think in general, reliability was pushed to the forefront, but also, the fixed cost. In our rate structure, we're relying less and less on the volumetric, the use of the water versus the fixed charges, because they're a bigger component.
Yeah, it always will be.
And that customer has to, know that when they turn that faucet on, a drop comes out, and that's a big part of the cost of the system.
Yeah, I think currently our volumetric charge is about 35% of the total cost is fixed.
The other way around.
I'm sorry, the other way around. Yep. And,
Okay.
been trying to get that more with 50/50 and even higher than that.
I think, where are we at with Lincoln now?
Close to 80.
Yeah.
80%
On
fixed.
the treated water side?
On the treated water side, Lincoln's, our charges through the master meter are 80% fixed, 20%, volumetric.
Yeah.
And so, and it's motivational for the reliability, but also to, if Lincoln's paying for treated water, we want them to keep taking treated water, and one way to ensure they keep taking treated water is to put the costs on that side, on the fixed side.
Yeah, and I appreciate the background on the way the zones have been moving back. I'm assuming zone 6 was the very last zone that you had, so now everybody's zone 6.
We created a new zone. We only had zones 1 through 5.
Six overlapped everybody.
6. Yep,
All right.
exactly.
Right on, right on.
We moved everybody into Zone 6.
Yeah.
We're gonna get rid of the old
Yeah.
ones.
One of the things we discussed internally as well was the, were it not for the person at the end of the canal or at the end of the line, the costs for those closer to the source are just gonna be different. They're not what they are, right? And so it's a system-wide process. No matter where we are, we're developing regionalized systems for NID's customers on a whole.
That's
3
right.
counties wide, right? And so, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard to have neighbors having different water rates.
Yeah.
politically it's difficult, right?
Right.
So, and it's just, it's really, like you said, it's not the same, I mean, it is one system, you need the same number of employees to service that entirety of that system, and if it's farther out you get, the more the cost, the system starts to go into death spiral mode, right, as people drop off, so. No, thanks for the discussion.
I would say the philosophy we've heard from our rate consultant is you can have the postage stamp option, or you can discretize everything. Where you go down a slippery slope is if you start picking and choosing where you want to do one versus the other, because then it sounds like you're gaming. But a postage stamp approach passes the muster of Prop 218. You just don't want to appear like you're gaming it. Well, we do postage stamp except here, situations like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yep, good.
Great discussion. Any questions? Director Miller? Anybody from the public? No questions? Okay. All right, well, we will, close that item then, and we'll move on to our legislative updates. Who wants to tackle that?
I'd love to hear about where you are on FERC stuff, and then maybe I can talk a little bit about our license implementation. Are you guys moving towards a license at some point, or?
Yeah. Let's see.
Or I can start with where we are, if
Why
you
don't you
want.
go forward, let me
Yeah, okay.
think
So we, we petitioned, FERC earlier this year, to issue a license based on, actually it was last year, that the State Water Board's, lack of ability to act on issuing a 401 certification. So we received our waiver. We had, at the time we got our waiver, we had completed our CEQA process. We actually completed CEQA back in 2012. Our ESA process and our NIPA process were all done. And so FERC found that we indeed deserved a waiver, and so they found that. We were issued our license in June. It was backdated to June 1, essentially, but it was about June 12th or so that we received our license. We expected we were going to end up in litigation over that the state was going to sue FERC. Actually, we would have been named, but the state was going to sue FERC on that finding of waiver, but 30 days passed and no suit came. And so we are essentially now free and clear, and we're in license implementation, a very sort of busy time for license implementation, because especially when you get a license mid-year, you're trying to figure out what can you do within that year versus what do you have to ask for to defer until next year, because, things like plant surveys or fish surveys or bird stuff, you can't do, even though it says do that in year one, the time for that's already passed since we got our license issued in June. We were kind of in a process every year since 2013 of reevaluating our cost structures around license implementation. We're doing that again based on the license conditions we received, which were not different, or they were not significantly different than what we had negotiated during the licensing period, so we had a pretty good handle on that stuff. But I will say that the delay from 2012, 2013 through, to 2021 was significant from a construction cost standpoint, from what we thought was going to cost $1 now costs $1.75, and so things like we have to modify low-level outlets at our dams. We have to modify some spillway infrastructure. Small diversions need to be screened. All of our campgrounds and water systems need to be rebuilt. All of those sort of upfront, and they are front-loaded into the first 15 years, construction costs increased significantly from the time that we negotiated them, and which admittedly was immediately post-recession, so construction costs were a little bit low at that time. But nevertheless, we have a program and a plan around the first 15 years of the financing plan through the Middle Fork Project Finance Authority. I think you know that we are business partners in the Middle Fork Project with the County of Placer. And so we have a couple of things happen with that JPA with the County of Placer. The smartest thing that JPA, Primo's on the JPA, did was establish a reserve policy for funds. So we've been selling directly to the energy market since 2013, and in that time, we've built up about $50 million in reserves, capital, operating, and emergency reserves in the project, and we've been able to fully fund those reserves, and this year was the first year we were able to take net proceeds out of the project, and so we had the project kicked off about $12.2 million of net proceeds this year, and we split that with the County of Placer. That's our business plan with them, and so we cut them a check for 6.1, and we moved 6.1 into our agency-wide reserves, and Tony could probably talk about what our plan is around our 6.1. But now we've done that, we believe that the next 5 years, and it just depends on the energy market because we're exposed to energy market conditions because we don't have a contract with a load-serving entity. We're a merchant generator. We sell every day on the open market. We think we probably won't have net proceeds over the next 5 to 7 years. As we front load these FERC license conditions, we move those what would have been essentially profit over into constructing these additional facilities. And right now, our 5-year capital plan is in the neighborhood of just roughly $7 million a year, 7 to 10 kind of, over the next 5 years, and then probably 5 to 7 over the 5 years after that. We kind of think of it in those 5-year blocks. But, all in all, our license implementation costs, if I had to look at it in present-day dollars, it's probably $140 million, and probably 100 of that is front-loaded into the first 15 years, and the remaining 40 is over the 40-year. We got a 40-year license. If I didn't say that, I should have.
How much is over the first 5 years?
Probably 100, over the first 15.
Oh, 15 years.
Is probably 100 million of it's over the first 15 years, and the remaining 40 or so is spread out over the term of the license. And that is, a lot of that is just, it's not mitigation, it's monitoring costs of, annual monitoring, fish, birds, plants, we have road responsibilities, things like that. And so we figure that's about $1 million to $2 million a year over the life of the license. So, does that help?
It does.
Okay.
It helps a lot.
Micro question,
Okay.
the marketplace with the hydro,
Uh-huh.
we had statewide, rolling blackouts recently.
Right.
Brownouts, or whatever we want to call them, and it was a combination of no wind, and I think there was smoke in the air at that point. The reliability of hydro, what the market, how'd the market respond?
So,
The availability and the reliability of hydro.
well, yeah, so we were, so other than the 48 hours that started Monday afternoon and stretched into Wednesday when our transmission lines were
When the
down,
rolling not
the
now.
PSPS,
No, I'm talking about the rolling blackouts here,
2 weeks ago.
when the big dome
The grid
was on us,
early,
and
yeah.
god awful heat, and there was no wind.
Recently.
right.
Yeah,
So-
about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So other than the 48 hours that started Monday through Wednesday, our units were available and participating in the market, both the day-ahead and the real-time market. And market prices reflected scarcity during those times. And so we, the off-peak hours continued to be what I would call depressed, and they're probably in the $30 a megawatt hour range, which I think is a depressed price. Reflective of a glut of natural gas still in the marketplace, and natural gas prices lower than $3. So the off-peak hours were that, and then the transition hours from 6 p.m. till 11 p.m. have very high prices during those times, and then the prices are. I think we had 1 hour in there that was $650, $800, somewhere in that range per megawatt hour during the 8 p.m. hour, essentially, in the evening.
And this is the PSPP, but this prior with the rolling brownouts were happening because of the grid collapsing, and their concerns
Right.
there. Similar?
That's what I'm talking about.
It didn't expand, it didn't expand to the off-peak hours.
It did not.
Because you hear reports of there's no wind, and that's the reliability.
Yeah.
For curiosity, it was Calpine some years back.
Yeah.
Were gonna be like 7 natural gas generators, but they went bankrupt and, went away. So again, I thought they were talking about need for, they being Cal-ISO and,
Well, we
I mean,
put
it's a discussion, I'm just, marketplace and how it all works. It seems like hydro is the most reliable still.
It is.
Yeah, right.
It is the most reliable.
So it's not being fully recognized at this date?
Well, it is in market price. I mean,
Well-
it doesn't so the market doesn't differentiate between generating resources. So
I'm sorry?
if the market
Generating in what?
generating resources, the market doesn't know if you're a hydro plant or a gas plant or a nuclear plant
Really?
or or you're on a bicycle pedaling. It doesn't matter. You put in a bid price and the market either accepts your bid or it doesn't.
So that's the agility of playing the market. They don't care where it's coming from.
Right.
It's up to the provider to play it, adapt or be agile. Okay.
Right. So California, when it's short,
Mhm.
the market price goes up, right? The supply-demand curve
Respect.
crosses at a price. And so,
$30 to $800, you said, on a peak.
that's right.
Yeah.
So if you don't need energy, the price is 30.
Settles back down to 30.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're in a bad spot, the rolling blackout, it changes, right? But it also depends on where you are. And so
Access to the.
the market model takes into account where the demand is, and Northern California demand pattern is different than Southern California demand pattern. And generating resources between those two are different because there's transmission constraints between the two,
Sure.
right? And so SP15, which is south of Bakersfield, all the way to the Mexican border, has significant transmission constraints and significant generating constraints because Arizona power needed to was staying home in Arizona because they had high demand. So SP15 prices in the off-peak were much, much higher than Northern California prices.
I don't know, what's the SP15 reference?
South of Bakersfield.
No, I mean, what is that? What does SP stand for?
Oh, south, so I'm gonna defer to Josh because he's gonna correct me, but it's south of Path 15. Path 15 is a large
Cal-ISO definition?
substation. Yeah, it's just a designation on a map.
Like Cal-ISO, I'm not sure
Yeah,
who's using the reference.
Right, Cal-ISO.
Cal-ISO.
Yes, exactly.
Literally, thank you, I'm
Yeah,
listening.
it's literally physical transmission constraints.
Okay.
So you can't move energy from Northern California to Southern California because the size of the pipe is not big enough.
Bottlenecks.
All right,
So our
they make it for us water guys.
Yeah, so our distribution of
Right.
Electricity would be similar to yours.
Yep.
Here, we are, and so then we would see this, back to the micro.
Yeah, yep.
So 30 to 800,
Right.
wow.
Right.
And then it would be up to the state/Cal-ISO to expand the need, we would feed it,
Well, yeah, it's,
potential of 800.
yeah, it's demand-based, right?
Oh,
So
what? How much, 800 for?
800 megawatt hour.
Megawatt.
Yeah.
There's a question?
Oh, yeah, Josh is gonna help us.
Here's our PG&E.
You want me to explain it?
We'd love it.
Complete.
Okay. So, the way that the paths the market is based upon is north of Path 15 and south of Path 15. And Path 15 is an area between Tracy and roughly Bakersfield. And what that has to do is with, in the past, there used to be 3 transmission lines that would come down from Oregon to California and 3 transmission lines that would come from Southern California to Bakersfield. And there was only 2 transmission lines that existed between what they call Path 15, Tracy and Bakersfield. They have now built a 3rd transmission path in there, but the market.
That's a bullet train? Oh.
But the market zones are still around those guidelines because there's basically the load centers are San Francisco and Southern California. And so depending on how power is flowing, the COI, which is California and Oregon intertie, which is north of Path which is north Path 15, and the south area, which is an intertie with Las Vegas and, Arizona, and that comes in from Southern California, is how the market is deviated, is how they establish their pricing based on congestion, generation availability, and load or usage, and all that kind of factors into a price.
So the infrastructure is historical somewhat, it's the draw or the load at this time that perpetuates the distinction.
Right.
SoCal and San Francisco, yeah.
Because remember, California decommissioned, or is in the process of decommissioning, multiple antiquated, or shall we just say, fossil fuel type plants, and replaced it with renewable energy generation. So what happened to people on that Saturday with the rolling blackouts and the others was there was cloud cover last minute over the solar renewables, and they had to go find generation. All of a sudden there was not enough reserve generation to keep stability in the grid if there was an accident or a fault, right? If there was some type of thing that would be a power interruption. So the balancing authorities have to have so much generation on reserve to match their forecasted load to account for different contingencies. And when those reserves shrink or there isn't availability, that's when they start escalating the energy emergencies.
Excellent. So yeah, it was the clouds predating the fires that caused, I knew there was, I couldn't remember if it was smoke from another fire, but it was clouds, yeah, right on. Excellent, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Funny world.
So I had a question about your cost.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the last meeting, last time we got together, that, you had essentially written your 401, permit, but then just given it to the water board back in 2012, and then they turned around and actually. I'm sorry?
I think we're still on two.
Still on.
Well, no, we skipped a little bit.
We're on FERC matters H1, I think is where we are.
Right.
Yeah, we're on H1.
401 served, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the next, I just said, so we're on the next item.
No, this is fine. Number one, FERC matters.
Oh, there,
401.
sorry. Put my glasses back on.
Go ahead.
Flash, there you go.
So, where was I?
I think you were saying we wrote the 401 term for the state water board, and that we did, yes,
That's
yes.
right. And so then the waiver came and
Right.
said you don't need to abide by the 401
Mhm.
requirement. Are you including those in your cost estimate from your client?
Yeah, and so the 401, what we ended up getting, from the state water board, they tried to put in a 401 cert at the last possible moment, but it essentially included the same conditions we negotiated, so there were some additional administrative conditions, which FERC said we do not have to abide by. In the greater scheme of $140 million of implementation costs, they were small, and so I think I wouldn't have revised my estimate if those were included or not, because we would have just worked them into the program. But we're not required to abide by those additional administrative provisions. They didn't have things like additional infrastructure or additional monitoring. It didn't come to that. It was more like everything that we did was going to have to get approval of the State Board of Staff, which we thought would have cost us time and money to go through a process, especially if they're understaffed. And so by not including those, we think we can be more expeditious and efficient on implementing our license conditions.
We didn't have the reopener clause either.
And the reopener is hard to put a number on, but obviously it's better if somebody can't reopen your license every 5 years to add new conditions.
Yeah.
How you put a value on that is almost priceless.
So you are implementing the basic
Yes.
requirements, but not the administrative.
Exactly. And because they've matched all of the Forest Service requirements and the other stakeholder requirements, we're implementing what we all agreed to in the stakeholder process.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks for that. I'll give an overview, and I have to be relatively careful. We're still in
Oh, yeah. I don't want you to divulge
session
anything.
issues,
Yeah.
but, essentially in June, I believe it was June, we did receive our FERC requirements.
Who are we in closed session with on this? An NGO or a?
Yeah, there's some legal considerations.
I'm just trying to remember looking at the
Yeah.
agenda and who's.
Yeah, an NGO, some other state, so.
So it is.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we received our FERC license. We calculated it out to roughly $220 million over a 40-year, window. Roughly in those first 5 to 7 years is approximately somewhere around the neighborhood of $65 to $80 million of activities that were necessary. Of that 218, pretty much figured that, roughly half is recreation-based. So it's our infrastructure improvement, it's some other roads improvements that the Forest Service, has put into the license. So that's kind of the broad scheme picture of the FERC licensing, that we're looking at the moment. Amongst that, we received a 401 certification, and that is currently, in process. We don't have the full cost associated with that 401 certification, however, largely due to it covers a number of FERC conditions as well, so there's a lot of overlap there. There are a number of other concerns within it, however, that are mostly around monitoring and future planning that we just can't put a number on at the moment. Right? You can write a plan, you can write a mercury management plan in your reservoir, but that's, $20,000 to write the plan. The implementation of the plan is something completely different that we don't have any idea about now. So there's a much larger cost, we believe, associated with some of that. There has been a couple suits right now filed against FERC regarding the waiver that came out of the DC Circuit Court that the Water Board waived their 401 rights on our license. So there's some argument against that at the moment. And then I think probably about all I want to give you at the moment. We're actively engaged and we're actively following and tracking, and we'll see kind of where the courts rule and where we go in the next year, 2 years. I'm not sure how long it's going to take.
One thing I wanted to say on this, Primo, for your benefit, is that PG&E has not sought a waiver for the drum spalding part of the project, which is, they're working their way down a list of priorities, is my understanding, of where they're seeking waivers, and they just haven't gotten to this, but it concerns me a little bit because I think there's a window of opportunity to get licenses, and if you let this window pass, then you're back into that, you don't know when the license is coming. And so I know that Yuba Water Agency has sought and received waiver, obviously NID has, and so the final piece of the Yuba River puzzle is PG&E, and so we're encouraging them to try to seek a waiver to try to line up this watershed and be done.
Right. That would be nice, and just carry on for the next 40 years, really.
Exactly.
Kind of keep going, because there's a lot we can do there.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the update.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Kind of all encompassing at the moment. But, any other, lead matters that are on the docket that are coming, Chip, from your side, or think of off of our heads?
I got one you want to cover, Tony?
Sure.
A couple.
I'm sorry, I skipped.
You go to
I skipped number 2.
Back to Patsy.
I apologize.
Number 2.
Do we want to talk anything on water quality?
Just to say that we are, PCWA is in at least one and probably more like 2 common interest agreements with neighboring parties in the American River watershed, in the upper and the lower watershed, on the State Water Board's Water Quality Control Plan and the voluntary agreement process, which I think I've discussed here before. And I think it's a it's good to have friends when you're going into this process, and I've talked just a little bit to Yuba, not very much to PG&E, and a little bit with Greg about how we potentially could organize ourselves in the Yuba and Bear River basins around a regulatory process where we could present a joint front about the value of water use in this basin and why it's important to continue to use water in this basin. And so, I don't know, I think we should try to continue this conversation, and maybe if you're all amenable, is to see if we can maybe work out something like that in the Yuba Basin among the major water users. And really it's Yuba, NID, and really it's PCWA on behalf of PG&E, because PG&E is going to defend their electric generation, but they're not going to defend their consumptive water rights, which serve both you and us. And so I think it's incumbent upon the local water agencies to really be on the same page when it comes to the state water board processes, so we're all in there in a common way. And so I don't know if that's something you want us to work on. I think Greg and I could probably work on it.
Yeah.
If that's all right. Primo, are you okay with that?
I'm more than okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I have on that. So maybe we can, Greg, you and I, and Willie probably need to get together and
We'll connect.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
That's all I have, Tony, on that one, so if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, I'd suggest going to H3, and I have a few items that are extremely brief, but you good there? Go to H3.
Yeah, any thoughts on number 2? Chip, any idea? Okay. Great. Yeah, let's move to H3. Sorry to jump in that one.
Oh, that's no problem. This will be super quick because we are running a little bit long here, but I had reported before on the regulatory front, the State Water Board's water loss economic thing model that they were doing, and it had some pretty harsh implications that frankly we looked at and didn't see great benefit in terms of water savings with, so a lot of the water suppliers around the state felt it needed to be fought a bit. They received over 100 letters on that. We had a little bit of a success. The State Water Board agreed to hire sort of a third-party peer reviewer because most of the letters were pointing out some just illogical, sort of dysfunctional things in their economic model. And so that's one path, is that from a technical standpoint, hopefully we'll get a more sound output from the State Water Board. That's hopeful thinking, unfortunately, because my hunch is that their staff is pretty well settled on what they want to do, but we'll find out how their board might respond to that. We are looking at another approach, is lobbying the water board members directly. There's nothing in the legislature that says it has to be an economic model, and we think a little bit more of an asset management approach to water loss is better. Their economic model essentially looks at fixing leaks. And that's one way to think of water loss, but I think a better way to look at it is, are you making long-term investments in pipes? And so we're hoping that they'll be open. I think Jeremy might even end up on a committee because he's kind of an asset expert. So that's one item. These other two will be super quick, and they're more on the legislative side. I don't know if you all saw that AB, I think it's 1659 that was, it came up quick and it ended quick. It was a legislative proposal to provide funding to forest health, forest management, thinning. The idea was to generate about $500 million initially through some sort of internal budget shenanigans, but then ultimately it would get into billions of dollars and pay that 500 back through a fee on large IOUs, and then they defined large IOUs to really be three, PG&E, Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. Here's what I liked, or what we liked, and there was an intrigue to support it, except for a few major problems, but the reason to support it is we like the idea of investing in forest health. The reason we didn't like it is this tie to large investor-owned utilities. Not only did it sort of put a burden on our common customers, because PG&E customers are our customers. And so that's one issue. But the other is, we're countywide, and this was the funding was gonna be limited to the sort of footprints of these 3 investor-owned utilities. And we think the state needs to be more open-minded to cover the whole state. And then there was a lot of pork in the bill too. There's a lot of pork in all these bills. Sometimes you have to overlook that for greater good, unfortunately. But there was just some issues. But bottom line is, I would not be surprised if we don't see something like that come back next year, and hopefully they can get it right. And then related to that, they've been talking about a resilience bond for all of 2020. And we heard proposals anywhere from $4 billion to $100 billion on climate resilience. The $100 billion came out post-COVID with a economic stimulus twist on it, and some crazy ideas on funding proposals for it. The climate resilience bond never happened, and the reason it never happened isn't, our sense, and what I'm hearing from our lobbyists, is it's not because the people didn't want it. It's because the legislature was not all that effective through the COVID time. So and that's evidenced by, and I don't have the numbers, but if you look at the number of bills that were passed in the legislature the last few months, it plummeted compared to previous years. And our lobbyists basically said there was just no sort of effectiveness in the legislature to make this kind of thing happen. So they're telling me if all the legislators want it, and we should see it happening again in early 2020. So that's just something to pay attention to.
That water resiliency, is that energy resiliency?
It's
Is it
climate resiliency, which covers water resiliency, forest health, some energy matters, and it even gets into some of the peripheral issues and even social issues and stuff like that. The reason we're interested in it is because there could be large sums of money for investing in backup water supply type things, and also from the forest health standpoint. Those are our 2 areas of interest.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, is there any question on those items at this point?
I don't really have anything legislative. Regulatory, we're kind of low-key at the moment, but we're perusing all the updated ag and urban water management plan guidance that's coming out. We're getting prepped for that, getting ready to roll. And then somewhat related to that is we're coming up on our watershed sanitary survey, and I think we're anxious and eager to work with you guys again. And in fact, I think Brad may have already reached out to us.
Good.
And so, yes, appreciate that, appreciate the coordination, and look forward to working with you guys on updating that plan as well.
Good. Yeah, Jeremy, you probably might get involved in that, so.
Got it.
Okay, anybody on the public who would like to make a comment on this item number H? Darn aye. Darn. Okay, we'll close item number H, and item I, any other matters?
Can we pass this out? This is our latest edition of Fire and Water that came, and we appreciate NID's support and participation. I think that this came out really nicely. This is the first year that we were able to do a glossy insert into the Gold Country Media magazines. In the prior years, it's been newsprint, which I think it's used to start fires most of the time in your fireplace, but you can't start a fire with it.
No.
Glossy it has to stay around longer. So the way this works is Gold Country Media, they gave us sort of a number of pages, and NID's on page 22. But they give us a number of pages for this publication. I think this year it was 30 is the number, 32. And we find, so our team at PCWA went out and found partners, content providers, essentially. The way this generally worked is the public agencies put in, what did we end up at, $1,000 or something like that?
Yeah, it was not mine, it was like $1,000.
$1,000 got you about 27,000 of these in circulation through the Gold Country Media subscriber services. And then we're able to get some NGO participation, folks like, Protect American River Canyons, which has a good message. You'll see the table of contents. So we had the Placer Conservation District, Protect American River Canyons, which is an NGO, CAL FIRE participated, and then we jointly participated with the water agencies in the Waterwise Home. And then, of course, PCWA, NID, the County of Placer was in here on fire stuff, Powell National Forest, and we were able to get the City of Roseville to participate, and then we had a message from the mayor of Auburn. And so the content was good, and then Gold Country Media sells ads to help defray the costs. That's how they make their money on this publication. But all in all, we were really happy with how it came out. Thought the colors were good, and so we're gonna hopefully, in partnership with these agencies, continue to build this out as we go forward. I think it's a really cost-effective way to reach not only our customers, which we do with newsletters, but this reaches a much broader part and slice of Nevada, Placer County citizens, which we really think is important. So, thanks for helping us this year on this, and I think it's our best edition yet. So.
Yeah, thank you guys for reaching out and putting this together. We cooperated with our respective communications departments and helped build this, so thank you guys.
Yep.
I think this is a good circulation and something worth being part of.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. These just hot off the press, huh?
Yeah, I think it went started last Friday and went through about Monday, I think, this week. I think City of Lincoln was the last one.
Today, probably.
Probably might even been today, yeah.
Might be today or next Thursday.
And Gold Country Media is Auburn Journal, Lincoln Messenger,
Yeah.
Roseville, I think.
Roseville,
The Placer Herald.
Placer Herald.
Placer Herald.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have, I think, 4 newspapers is what they have, so.
You
Yeah,
gotta
Press
get
Tribune,
that.
Press Tribune, Auburn Journal, Loomis News, Placer Herald, Lincoln Messenger.
Right.
So, you get all those.
There you go, yeah.
Yep, right there in the front. So you
Good.
get all 5 of those publications. So it's about 27,500 subscribers. So,
You got a few stacks out there, let us know if you
Yeah.
want more.
Perfect.
that's all I had under other matters.
Okay. I don't have anything specific, you guys done?
I'm gonna get an autograph before you leave.
That's a real candid, relaxed photo, Andy.
I think that was actually on site. I don't think that was a green screen, but I could be wrong.
That's great, it looks great.
We got a Robert Dugan photo in there too.
Actually,
Good. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and think about the next time and date? Let's see,
Could be
quarterly.
December.
We'd be into December?
Wow.
How did we get to
Good
end?
gosh.
Yeah, quarterly. It's
Okay.
early December,
I think we usually bump that one up in January.
Yeah, let's push that
Well,
to January if we're,
sounds like a
you
fine
guys are
idea.
good with that.
Yep.
Maybe
So our board meetings are the 7th and 21st in January, so if we're gonna target a Thursday, can we target the 14th? Which is our off day for us?
January, that.
Or unless Primo, you
Fine.
wanna do it on a board meeting day, so you
Either
can
way.
come up once.
Yeah, whatever works for everybody.
How about the 21st? Oh, no, that's a fine.
January.
We're in January, I'm
We're looking
sorry.
at January.
Is the 7th of January too early, or is that okay? Okay.
What day is that?
It's a Thursday, the 7th, and I'm just thinking Primo could come up once that day.
And it would be at our place.
It'd be at our place,
7th?
Yep.
Lights will still be up?
Yeah. Does 9 work, or is 10 work better for you? Do you guys have a preference?
We don't, I mean, 10's fine.
If we do 10, then we can just have lunch and then stay for our board meeting. Can we do 10 that day?
10 o'clock, January 7th?
Yep. You like Lori now?
Yep.
And,
Okay, so, Danette, you'll coordinate with Lori, right?
Yeah.
Lori?
Yep. Maybe we'll be back to, in person, I don't know, it's difficult, but.
That's a Thursday.
We'll hope.
2021's a new year.
Hey.
We can put all this behind us.
Started new. Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. And, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you.
It's, 10